Okay. Okay, are we ready? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're ready to begin this morning's special board meeting. The special school board meeting of September 16th, 2020 is now called to order, and the time is 11:02 a.m. We would like to take this opportunity to remind the members of the public of the district's mission, which is to ensure that each student achieves his or her highest personal potential, and of the district's vision to be a world-class school system. Today's agenda includes public comment, 2 items under superintendent's recommendation, one of which is for good cause. Dr. Adkins, please provide an explanation for this one item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The good cause item is approval of the service agreement and expenditure with the South Golf Football Officials Association. The reason for this item needing to come good cause is this agreement was just recently reached with the South Golf Football Officials Association very recently, and we have games coming up prior to the next board action. So therefore, I'm bringing it forward today for board approval.
Thank you. As presiding officer, I find that there is good cause to add this one item to the agenda. Also on the agenda are 4 items under other business. Board members, is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Ms. Vaughn?
I move to adopt the agenda.
And seconded by Ms. Jordan. Thank you. Please record your vote. And the motion carries 5-0, with 2 members not present. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Mrs. Dupuy-Bruno, please address the item of public comment.
The school board provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda or any other matter relevant to the school district. We encourage each speaker to wear a mask during public comment, and the speakers and those attending the meeting are expected to act in a respectful manner. The time per speaker is 3 minutes. You will find a countdown on the big screen. Madam Chair, at this time, I do not have anyone for public comment.
Thank you. Then is there anyone in the audience who did not fill out a blue card and does wish to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to superintendent's recommendations. Dr. Atkins.
Okay, the first recommendation is again approval of the service agreement and expenditure with the South Golf Football Officials Association.
Okay, board members, you've heard the superintendent's recommendation that the board approve the service agreement and expenditure with South Gulf Football Officials Association in the amount not to exceed $75,000 for the term of September 1st, 2020 through July 31st, 2021. Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation? Ms. Vaughn?
I move to approve the superintendent's recommendation.
And second, Ms. Jordan. Thank you. Any discussion, board members? Okay. Please record your vote. And motion carries 5-0. With 2 members absent. Do we have someone calling in?
That was me. I was late because of car accidents on my way here. Not one I was in, but
but I got here in time.
Okay,
So
okay,
I had called in initially.
okay.
My apologies.
Thank you very much. Okay. Dr. Atkins, you want to proceed?
Yes, Madam Chair. Next recommendation is approval to issue the notice of proposed action to terminate the charter with Collegiate Academic Enterprises of Fort Myers Corporation for the Collegiate School of Fort Myers Charter School. Approval authorizes the superintendent to execute related documents.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation? Ms. Morgan?
I move we approve the superintendent's recommendation to issue the notice of proposed action to immediately terminate the charter with Collegiate Academic Enterprises of Fort Myers Corporation for the Collegiate School of Fort Myers Charter School.
Thank you. And a second? Ms. Jordan? Okay. Any discussion, board members?
Madam Chair, I would like the opportunity to provide the board with a little bit of background information. So if you would indulge us just for a moment, I'd like, we've got Terry Kennedy here, who has, all these people have actually been out to the school that we'll be calling for today. I know she's going to speak overall, and then Dr. Carlin will speak to the academic programming at the school, and Linda Mayer will speak to the just the overall facility and supervision that she saw in place. So I'll start with Terry Kennedy,
Thank
who,
you.
as you know, oversees charter schools for our district.
Good morning.
Morning.
As an administrator in the district over the last many years, I've had the opportunity to open lots of schools. This is my first time being involved in looking to terminate a school, and it's unfortunate. Just to give you a little background briefly, the application for the charter school, it was approved in June of 2019 for 450 students for a K-8 with a minimum enrollment of 120 students. The person listed for the governing board is Tamara Barnes, and that is the person that we've been attempting to work with throughout the process. We were scheduled to actually open 3 charter schools. We had 3 charter school applications for this school year, and 2 of the 3 opted to defer the opening due to the pandemic. The collegiate still wanted to open, and we provided a lot of assistance, or attempted to provide a lot of assistance this summer. During the summertime, there's many requirements that are necessary in order to open the school. And I would say probably starting in June is when we started to realize that we were going to have lots of issues. And that came about because of the lack of communication as well as missed deadlines. The governing board for the school, as I said, has listed as Tamara Barnes and 2 other ladies, Miss Alicia Brown and Marilyn Jones. But if you were to go on their website, you would see 3 other people that are listed as their governing board. Not these 3 ladies, but 3 other individuals. If you look on their actual training, so one of the requirements that is for the governing board is to provide to us their name and contact information, as well as their minutes and their meetings that they have, and it's supposed to be added to their website. And the training that was taken by 3 individuals was not the 3 that were listed on the application or the website. So there's basically not a clear representation for the school. So all along, we've been asking for, we need to know who your staff are, who's your governing board, we need contact information, all of those required kinds of things. The staffing outlined in their application lists a great deal of people, from your principal to your operations officer to your teachers, from PE to all of the things, the staff that you would expect for a school. Probably listed at about 20 different individual or positions for the school. On July 2nd, we asked, so who is your staff? Give us a list of your staff and names. On July 2nd, we were given a head count. They said they were going to have 26 on staff. And that was for the purpose of giving them masks, because we were providing masks for all charter schools. We continued to ask for the names and didn't receive any. After we've had multiple emails, phone calls, we had multiple district staff attempting to provide assistance. Donna Schroll was, as she does for all schools, she sends reminders, she sends prompts for, let me help you, providing, here's the person that can assist. She had Susan Joyner. Susan Joyner handles Focus, and she reached out with phone calls and emails, and to no avail, because we're still sitting with students that aren't completely scheduled. Denny Atkins helped with mainframe and also provided, here's somebody with a charter school that can help you. And he spent quite a bit of time trying to assist. Anita Gambecki helped with CSIMS, which is the Charter Information Management System that charter schools have to set up. This is where they put your people in and that load into our system. And we had other people assisting as well. And we continued to try to provide the assistance, try to ask, and asking for the requirements. Finally, I would say, when we weren't receiving most of the things in July, by the beginning of August, they said, well, let's just hold their payment, because they still haven't complied with many things, to include insurance. So I called Ms. Barnes. You know, we had left messages, had emailed. I called and left the message that, okay, we're at the point that you're not going to get a payment. And so she called me back. And when I spoke to her, this was on a Friday afternoon, I said, Ms. Schroll will send you another email on here's the things you need to do in order to continue to receive your payment. So she provided a list, and many things on the list they started to do. They started to add some things to the website. They got their insurance completed. They sent in their opening. Every charter school was required to send a reopening plan, just as we were, but each charter school had to send their own. Their plans were pretty much like ours, with the Home Connect model and all of those kinds of things. And their application, their 400-page application, was complete with lots of wonderful things. They still have yet to comply with many of these. They started, and they got a lot of things done, but they didn't get everything done. And to date, we still don't know who is on their governing board. As of yesterday, when they didn't receive a payment, they finally, I sent multiple emails, and I'll tell you about my visit in just a moment, but after sending an email, I said, we still need we have these concerns you need to address. Yesterday, we finally got a response because they didn't receive a payment, and the response was, well, I talked to my staff about your concerns, and I have some students scheduled, so where's my payment, is basically what it came down to. They have, as far as the support on the first day of school, or prior to the first day of school, we did say, you know, your first payments are based on your minimum enrollment of the 120 students. And the payments are then adjusted on the first day of school based on your enrollment. And your enrollment is, what do you have, your students that are scheduled. And prior to that date, I said, you don't have any students in there, so your payment's going to be based on the number of students, and that's 0. So they reached out and said, I can't do this, it's not working, and so we provided more support. So I went to the facility. We asked multiple times if we could go on site to visit the school, but the address initially, they didn't have the address till July, and then they weren't on site at the address, and they didn't have furniture. So they refused to meet with us and said they weren't here. So when I actually, first day of school, I said, well, I need to go out there and see what's happening, since they're still opening. So I went on the first day of school, and when I got there, I wasn't even sure where the school was, because I just followed the MapQuest or the program in my phone. And so I finally saw a banner on a building, and from the banner I said, okay, this must be the building, this must be the school. So I went up to the door, and there's no signage, there's no indicator of where to go in. So I tried to open the door that I thought would be the front door, and it was locked. So I looked around and started to walk a little bit further, and I could hear kids in a classroom. So I attempted to look in the window, but the windows were so dirty you really couldn't see in the windows. I did observe that there was 2 classrooms, but then I made it to the second door I saw propped open. So I went into that door, and it was a room that was empty but broken tiles, and so I was attempting to go around into that room when an adult came out, and I identified myself, and the woman I spoke to identified herself as Miss Williams, the acting principal and 3rd and 4th grade teacher, and also the person responsible entering all the data for the school. So I said, well, I really need to talk to you because, you know, we've got a lot of issues here. And I said, can we go to an office? And she said, okay. And I started to try to follow her, and she said, no, go around front. I'll meet you out front. Okay. So I went around to the front door. She opened it, and we met for probably about 10 minutes, but she was covering a class. So, you know, as she said, she's also a teacher. So I couldn't keep her too long, but I said, look, you know, you have to comply with these things. You have to get the students in. You have to have your teachers in. Because at this point, we have 0 teachers entered, 0 students entered, but we know the school's running. So she said she couldn't get in mainframe. And I said, well, show me what you're doing. And she wasn't using the technology correctly. She was in the wrong program. But she pulled out a notebook where she had Tamara Barnes, the governing board member, all of her access information for each of the accounts with the passwords. So I attempted to take her, you know, to show her, no, this is mainframe. And I said, well, this isn't really the time, and I'm not really the best at teaching that kind of thing, but we do have people that can support you. I called Susan Joyner and said, this is a person that can help you. And we talked about how she could get things set up that afternoon and talk. I also asked Susan Joyner, well, who's the best, you know, person in charter schools, since they have to do things a little bit differently and familiar with CSIMs. So I gave her a contact. And so I gave her the contact information of another information specialist. I left there with a very uneasy feeling that, first of all, there's no signage, there's no one at the front desk, there's no coverage, there's multiple things. So I did come back and speak to some staff. I believe I spoke to Dr. Spiro and others, and said, you know, I really, there's lots of concerns still. And I spoke to Dr. Desamores about the fact that they didn't have the students in. And so we felt that the best thing for me to do would be to go back out on Friday. So I went back out on Friday. They still hadn't put their students in. They still hadn't put their teachers in. And when I went on Friday, I made it into the front office this time. And on the first visit, I did see out front there was the SRO in his car. And he did approach me before I left. But when I asked about the SRO, I said, well, where's your SRO? And she said, well, he's out in his car. And I said, well, it's not acceptable for your SRO to sit in a car for 8 hours. They have to be in the building. And so I said, you really need to make space. And so Miss Williams was very nice, was very cooperative, but just didn't get things done. And she did say that she would make a space for the SRO. And when I left, I did speak to the SRO about some safety concerns. He was not given keys, and he still does not have keys to the building. So if he leaves the building, he gets locked out. So when I go back for my second visit, nothing's really been corrected. And I did attempt to meet again, but she's covering a class. So I didn't get a whole lot of information at that point. So I came back to the district and talked to our attorney as well as Dr. Atkins, that I just really have some serious concerns here that, I don't know what's going on. They didn't let me in. They didn't. And so at that point, it was discussed that, well, you need to tell them to let you in. So when I went back in the afternoon at 2:30, they were out on the playground. Well, I, once again, attempted to go in the school. Front door is locked. Back door is propped open. I walk in, I don't see anybody. And then I hear kids' laughter. So I'm like, oh, they must be outside out back. Because I had already walked around the building the previous visit, and there's a playground out back. So I went around the back, and I'm standing for probably about 10 minutes at the fence, watching the kids, looking for an adult. Couldn't see anyone. I finally talked to the students and said, where's your teacher? And they said, oh, well, over there. So I went in through the gate, and eventually, I got over to where the two teachers were sitting under a tree, which obstructed their view of the students on the playground. It was a pretty big area to cover, and there's no way that you could supervise or see everyone. While I was standing there talking to Miss Williams, because she's identified herself as the acting principal, I'm just kind of observing that the other teacher's still sitting there, and again, she's watching, but she can't see a lot of the kids. And they didn't see me. I could have easily taken a student, or a student could have left without them knowing. But while I'm standing there, I'm watching two little students in uniform. They were probably kindergartners. And I said, well, where are they going? And she said, well, they're going to the bathroom. And I said, okay, well, who's going with them? I mean, is there supervision? And she said, oh, well, we make them go, they can't go alone, they go by two. And I said, well, where is it that they're going? She said, oh, it's just right around the corner. In fact, it was actually all the way around the other side of the building, in that back door that I go in to get into the building. And so these two students are going into the building by themselves. They did come out while I was talking to the acting principal. I said, I really need to take a look at the school. And I really need, you still haven't complied with anything. I mean, you still don't have students in there. So I went in, she said she would take me in. I was kind of waiting for them to come in from the playground, because I thought, I don't want to leave one person supervising 25 kids. We did pretty much walk in together, but the one lady did say, okay, I can supervise them all. When I went into the building, they had 4 classrooms set up, and they had been using 3. So in essence, they had 2 adults on campus, that's it. 2 adults on site, and there's 3 classrooms. And I said, well, how are you doing 3 classrooms with 2 adults? And then she showed me how she could stand between the 2 classrooms. And I said, you absolutely cannot do that. This is not a way to teach students. And she explained that they had lost one of their staff members. And I said, look, when I talked to you on Monday, I said, this is a priority, getting everybody in, but you need to have supervision. And so I shared several things with her, but at that point, they were getting ready to do dismissal. And their actual application says their hours are 8 to 4. On their paperwork that's right there in the office, it says 8:30 to 3:30. And they were doing dismissal, and it was 3 o'clock. And I had just spent a half hour on the playground, so the last half hour, 45 minutes, was playground and then dismissal. And their PE is scheduled earlier in the day. When I left, I came back to the district, and that's when we had discussion about, unfortunately, I was going out of town on a family reunion. And it was over the long weekend, and I, again, had serious concerns. So Dr. Atkins said to talk to Dr. Spiro, who would then follow up. I did follow up with an email documenting many of the concerns I just shared. Of note, they did reach out to the charter school person. They said they would pay her $500 to enter the information. She worked with them they gave her their password and information for CSIMs. And she did a lot of work over the holiday weekend, but she only did what she could, because there was still a lot of missing information To date, she has not been paid anything. The files are incomplete. We have students without schedules. We have the teacher of record that they have, which is one person, is Tamara Barnes, who is she's over in Broward County. She's not certified for the elementary or any of the others. We honestly do not know who the people are that are on campus that are teaching these kids. Have they been screened? Have they been, all of those things. So since I was gone, Dr. Spiro asked Dr. Carlin and Ms. Mayer to go visit. So I guess they can share their visit with you. I would like to say one final thing with these notes, and a follow-up again on Monday, saying, you never respond to my email with concerns, and here are still the concerns. And yesterday, when they said, hey, we didn't get my payment, but I addressed these concerns, I followed up with, I'm in training all day from 8 to 5, but I will follow up with you tomorrow. But please provide me with your staff along with contact information. We still haven't received it.
So board members, as our other administrators come up and give you just a little bit, kind of a concise summary of their visitation, I think you understand why we're here today. I mean, we need to, I think, move very aggressively to take action so that we can make sure these kids are taught in a safe environment and are getting the education that they need. When Ms. Kennedy brought this to myself and Ms. Dupree-Bruno, I think both of us feel that we need to take the most aggressive action that we can take under the law, and again, this is why we are here.
Dr. Atkins, yeah, Ms. Vaughn has a question or a comment.
Yeah, I have a couple questions. First of all, were there not any red flags this summer on this organization that's running this school? It sounds like from the report that right from the get-go, before school ever opened, there were problems.
There were some indications because of deadlines, of not completing deadlines. But then as I said, when we threatened to not make the first payment, they complied with getting all of their insurance in, getting their reopening plan, so the statutory requirement for actually providing the staff and all is like 2 weeks prior to school opening. So it doesn't give us much time. And so once that happened, and one of the things that DOE has said over and over again is to work with grace and compassion, because we're working in a tough environment. So yes, we had red flags. Yes, we really tried to hold them accountable. And that's one of the limitations, I think, with charters, is that what can you do to hold them accountable? And even that is questionable. I can tell you that when I threatened to, us to not provide a payment, which they said that we're not able to do that, according to their attorney, we can't do that because they are complying. My goal again was to assist them in making, in opening the school, in providing the assistance that we could. We had no indicator that they were not going to have a staff. I mean, if you were to look at their 400-page application with the instructional strategies and the staffing and all that, and even on July 2nd, when she says she has a staff of 26, and then I go there and there's 2.
Okay, two other things. You said you were not allowed to go and inspect the school before?
So when I'm sorry.
Let me finish my question. What are the state guidelines? Does DOE have, I can't understand why an administrator from our school district, which is responsible, these are our kids in Lee County, how we can be denied entry into that school.
So I think that's on me, in that I attempted to go in by saying, can I come in? And then when I wasn't welcome, I came back to meet with the attorney and Dr. Atkins, because I felt like we need to see what's going on. And that's when Dr. Atkins says, you have the right to go in there.
Well,
I said,
yeah.
okay. Well, I didn't know, I attempted, but I didn't know I could insist and say, you need to let me see the building. And when I did, she complied.
Okay, because to me, that's a huge red flag that they wouldn't welcome you to go in. And my third thing is, I'm sorry to the SROs, but what the heck was going on with that SRO was he a trained SRO through, the city of Fort Myers?
So he is an SRO with the Lee County Sheriff's Department, and
Sheriff's
he has been an
Department, right.
SRO before, and he was very concerned. And so he was contacting his supervisor during the week as to some of the concerns. For example, the food sitting out for an hour and those kinds of things. I will say that I met with Commander Miller and the Lieutenant Lowe, and because they were working as well, this wasn't something that, as I said, I've opened lots of wonderful schools. I've never encountered anything like this. And actually last year I made a point of going and visiting charter schools, and I was, it was safe, positive learning environments. So this was just.
I'm not trying to attack anybody, but quite frankly, I'm appalled at the conditions. I'm appalled that a trained SRO would be sitting in his car and would stand, that he didn't have keys, that would, it's bad enough, as you said, there was food sitting out, but for heaven's sake, the school was not locked down. You could have been a shooter, you could have been a kidnapper, anybody, you can't, I'm ready to say right now, pull it, and they should have been pulled day 2. What do they have, like 40 kids?
The SRO has continued to ask for the keys, and that was one of the reasons that the commander came to meet with me recently, is because he still doesn't have keys. So the belief is stay in the building so that you can protect. I will tell you, on the first day, he did come out and approach me.
But what I'm not understanding is, where are the laws for this? How can we have an SRO saying, here's 2 people in a school that has so many deficiencies, and how can the SRO, it's almost like he's whining, oh, I didn't get keys. Don't we have built-in protections in this state? Is there something from DOE that's stopping that SRO for saying, I'll get the keys, or I'll have more people come out here? Because that's what I'm not understanding. What protections the state offers us so that you wouldn't have had all this difficulty, and that we could have stepped up with this from day 1 when that SRO was sitting in his car and not having keys. Do we have state laws?
Ms. Vaughn, thank you.
I'm done.
I'm going to ask Attorney Bruno to weigh in on that.
I'm done with.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With regards to the statute, we absolutely have the right to enter any charter school. Any board member, any staff can enter any charter school at any time. That's per statute. That's also in our board policy. With regards to the SRO, they receive their training through their public entity that's training them. We don't really have any control about SROs. I can tell you, with regards to terminating charter, it's very difficult. The department is not inclined to terminate charters. It has to be something that's pretty serious. Even financial issues sometimes are not enough. Most recently, a case came out where a charter school did not even have an SRO, period. There was no SRO. And the district went forward and tried to terminate the charter based on that, on welfare and safety of students, and that was denied. So it's not an easy process. And I know it's hard to hear, but it's not an easy process, and it's very, very difficult to move forward and terminate charters.
Well, if we want legislative priorities, I would put that way up there, because the children that were there were certainly endangered. That's all I have to say.
And this is one of the reasons that we're taking a very unusual step. Districts do not normally request that we be able to immediately enter and take the operation of a charter school. It's hardly ever done. And I have checked with some of the other districts to see approximately how many times does this happen, and it's just rarely done. That's why we're taking these types of actions.
Okay, thank you.
And I've been involved in the closure of a number of charter schools, but never have we been in a situation that concerned me really as much as this one, which is why we're taking this aggressive action today.
Thank you. Ms. Mayer? Oh,
You have a question?
Just real quick. So my question is regarding, at what point is it required by the state to know the address? I mean, I would think that would be one of the most important things, because I'm a little concerned now that we approved something that we didn't have an address to. I mean, because the facility is very important. So at what point is it required that we know an address?
Madam Chair, I think I can answer that question as well. It's not that we did not necessarily know the address. As we were preparing for this and getting ready to pretty much take operation, we needed to find out who the governing board was. In their application, they gave us names, they gave us addresses, and we relied on that information. It is now that we're discovering within the last day or so that there may be some issues with that.
Thank you.
thank you. Okay. And Ms. Mayer?
I'll be very brief. Terry's already covered most that I was going to say. When we drove up, I'm just going to talk about the environment. We drove up, there was no signage. You didn't know where the front door was. There was a broken sign or torn sign that said to ring the bell. There was no bell there whatsoever, so there was no way to enter. Dr. Carlin and I walked around the facility, and there was a door open at the back, like Terry referred to. We walked into it. It was broken tile. When I say broken, shards of tile sticking up, very dangerous. We walked in, walked around, no one contacted us, no one stopped us. We did encounter the SRO, and he did one of these down the hall, but didn't come and greet us. We got close enough to one of the classrooms, and the little children ran out. My concern was just the facility itself. As Terry referred to the windows being filthy, the trash was everywhere, and when we talked about that, it's all contracted out. But there was outside, there was all the trash from multiple days just piled up in the classrooms. The floors were filthy. The building was filthy. Trash was everywhere. The trash cans were overflowing with food and not been picked up. And it was just not a safe environment for our children to be in. So I'm going to support Terry and her. And the Dr. Atkins agree completely. This is not somewhere you would put your children. If you have any questions for me about just the environment that day and what it looked like. Yes, Atkins.
Did you have any opportunity to speak with anyone?
I did. Mrs. Williams is a delightful lady. We did talk with her. We talked about the facility, and again, she told me there's a company that's supposed to come in and clean and take care of those things. It had not happened. She said, we talked about, requirements of signage that are required, and she said she didn't know anything about that there was, requirement for signage of the building. She talked about everything's contracted out from her, so she did not know most of the questions we asked her about. She didn't know. She had not had any type of drill. We're required to have drills within so many days. She had not done any of those things. Again, she was delightful. We just sat in that room where there was boxes of furniture open, chairs stacked very high. If a little child had run into it, it could have been a very dangerous situation. And we sat and talked with her. She just didn't have all the information.
And was she, at this point, in your estimation, the one that was in charge, or that's
She
where?
said she was the acting principal. Yes, ma'am. She was covering a class, 2 rooms, and she stands in the hallway, so they're not even connected. She stands there and views those 2 rooms, and somebody else came and stood there in between them. I'm not sure what her role was. I think maybe a paras position, and then there was a teacher in the primary K to 2, I believe they said, and then it was divided 3 to 5, and then 6 to 8 were divided up.
And Ms. Kennedy said that she had visited more than once. Were you guys able to visit more than once, or was this your once?
This was our one visit.
Okay. Thank you.
Attorney Bruno.
With regards to the environment, if Ms. Mayor can also just talk about what she observed in the kitchen.
Sorry. Yes, in the kitchen, signs of animals, bugs in the kitchen. It was very filthy. The food was left out. There was chicken, noodle, some type of container. It was just sitting on the counter. The breakfast food was just sitting there on the counter. It was pancakes that day, I believe. My understanding from what Ms. Williams explained to us is the food is dropped off, I guess, outside, and then they bring it into the building, and then it just sits on the counter until breakfast is over, and then it sits there for lunch. I did not open up the refrigerator and look inside of it, but that entire area, there was a refrigerator there, but that entire area was not kept, very, very unkept and not cleaned up.
Ms. Gittens.
And so there was no, evidence of kitchen staff or support staff, or, so just the two adults?
There was 3 that day that we were there,
3 for 2
Or 3,
classes is what it was.
for 3 classes.
And one last thing, were there ever, and this may be Ms. Kennedy or the superintendent, were there ever any parent concerns or complaints that were raised?
Not to
Any
my
of the-
knowledge. While I was there, one of the parents, I guess, wanted to pick up her child, and I guess didn't get contact. Miss Williams did explain to me that the parents all have her number, so they just call her when they want to pick up their child, and so then she takes, she takes them out to them. But while we were there, a parent came up and knocked on the window and pointed at her child, and so then the child just left and went out.
So.
And that was in the primary class.
Okay, and on their information on the website and all, it mentions, pre-collegiate courses in middle school and all that. So the only students that you saw, though, were smaller, like kindergarten, first?
Walked into the middle school group as well. They were working on copies of packets. I believe these items, we use them in our district. It's called collections. But there were copies instead of originals of the workbooks and things.
And how many, you were saying there was like 40 children altogether, about how
There
many
were
were the
23 the day we were there. I'm not sure how many are supposedly doing, like a home connect type of situation. There were 23. I think there were 5 in the room. That there were 4 boys and a girl sitting in the middle school. So I did stay in there for a while and observe. Dr. Carlin's going to talk about the instructional piece, but I did observe for quite a while. They were all grouped 6 to 8 in one class, and they were doing the same work on the same packets.
And is there Home Connect? I noticed that it mentioned Home Connect as well. Are they connected to one of our regular schools? Or when they say Home Connect, it means?
I think it means to their school. I don't
Okay.
know that answer.
Okay, thank you.
So there are 41 students that are on record with partial schedules, but when we were there, there's no indication of, they say Home Connect, but I don't believe there's a Home Connect going on. But there's no way of really knowing for sure. We didn't see computers. If you look at their brochure, it's beautiful. It shows kind of like what you would, it shows a uniform school, state-of-the-art facility is what they claim. And there's a claim of, there's also on the brochure that each student will be provided an iPad. I did not see books, computers, any of those kinds of things.
And do we have in our records, attendance records, do we have access to that?
We do, and that's through, in Focus, we have checked, but again, they haven't completed the schedules. So if a student is not scheduled completely, then we can't look at attendance. So there are some students showing in attendance, and I have already taken the list of 41 students to student assignment. 20 of the 40 have previously attended one of our schools. I would say there's probably a dozen students here that are kindergartners. So I don't know, how many have actually been in attendance. I would tell you that when I attempted to count on the playground, it was less than 30, and that's kind of the reporting that I've had with the SRO. And I think that's the same reporting they had.
Okay, thank you.
Attorney Bruno.
Just one more thing from an environmental standpoint, Ms. Mayor. If you could please advise the board as to your observations regarding social distancing, sanitization, use of masks, or anything related to the protection against COVID-19, please.
The students, when Dr. Carla and I walked in, they're sweet, and they came and grabbed us. They did not have masks on. They were hugging when we got there. They just left the room. The teacher didn't stop them or anything, but there was no social distancing. They were up, running around the room, and there was an instruction going on, and I'm going to let her address that, but there was no social distancing. I couldn't tell that there were any kind of seat assignment for the students to even know. So like in the middle school, there was only 5, and it was a fairly large classroom where you could have spread out and they were just sitting together. So there was no social distancing.
Ms. Giovanelli.
One question that I had, are charter schools not required to have the same safety measures in place like schools, like public schools?
So it's my understanding, good afternoon, board members, and Dr. Atkins as well. It's my understanding that there are safety regulations that they
Right.
need to statutorily follow.
Right.
However, I think there is some relaxation around SREF rules, and I would defer to Attorney Bruno to
So
weigh in
the
on that.
The charter schools have to present a plan, just like we had to present a plan to DOE. And once they present the plan to us, then we incorporate it with our plans. But it doesn't necessarily have to follow our guidelines. They can come up with their own guidelines.
They still need to be in compliant, right? I mean,
Their guidelines that they created.
yeah, but it clearly doesn't even sound like they're within their guidelines.
I don't
I'm
believe
trying to
that they're in their guidelines for many, many things.
Thank you.
So my job, just briefly, board members, as we close out, is just to provide you with some insight into the learning environment in the classrooms. So just as a point of reference, I served as a school-based administrator for approximately 18 years. And I will tell you, walking into the learning environment, it was one of the most disturbing that I've seen. Very concerned about the primary classroom, the lack of structure, no apparent lesson plans. As Mrs. Mayer indicated, the children ran out to us, which is natural. They're little guys, so they came out to give us a hug, and, of course, we want to, but we know that's not what we're supposed to be doing, so we encourage them to get back into the classroom. When we walked into the primary classroom, again, it was very disturbing. There was a student that appeared to have some special needs. He was seated off to the side. He got up at one point. He was nonverbal, it was obvious, bumping into walls, bumping into children, nobody really looking after him. So that hurt my heart when I saw that. That caused an emotional reaction from both Mrs. Mayer and myself. The teacher quickly grabbed a book, tried to do a read aloud, asked 2 questions that really required a yes or no answer, but there was no rhyme or reason to that lesson. That child continued to wander around the room. There were a couple children who was obvious they only spoke Spanish. No attempt to have any ESOL strategies in place, no attempt really to engage them, nor further some accommodations that we know as good educators need to be present in that classroom. So that was the primary classroom's instruction. When we went into the intermediate classroom, it was identical to the middle school classroom. There were packets that children were expected to complete. We went over and asked a few questions. What are you learning today? Just the things we typically do when we visit classrooms during walkthroughs. Some of the children were legitimately trying to answer the questions. It was obvious some of them struggled. There was no evidence of instruction happening. We never saw the children really ask a question. They just kind of meandered through the packet and looked at us like, why are you here and what are you doing? So it was very obvious there was no attempt at instruction. We mentioned engagement before. A number of students, I think they were wanting to engage. There just was nothing to engage with. It was, again, very disturbing to see the children who obviously needed some extra support not receiving that. And then the third item is just really the lack of a comprehensive research-based curriculum, instructional, and assessment program. The second part of our visit, first part was a classroom walkthrough. The second part was really interviewing the principal and having a conversation about, tell us about your academic program, tell us about your curriculum, How do you determine when children receive intervention? What is the assessment program? She struggled, and again, she was a love. I mean, we absolutely enjoyed our visit. She was a kind individual, but she really did not have the substance behind her in terms of their curriculum and their instructional approach. So overall, like I said, a very disturbing visit in our professional opinion. The learning environment there, in my opinion, is detrimental to the academic well-being of children, and I have tremendous concerns about the safety of us being able to walk onto a campus with nobody approaching us, asking us. We walked directly into a primary room without being stopped. As a principal who served many years in this district, that would be appalling to me. When we mentioned it to the principal, she did not bat an eye. So from our perspective, we are supporting the superintendent's recommendation. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan? And then Mrs. Patrica.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I definitely have concerns as well. I know exactly where the school is located, and it is right there at Palm Beach, where the kids could jump over the tracks, and they're right there, which is really concerning that they could actually leave the playground and walk around that school.
Yeah.
And then I know that in the community itself, there's a lot of Hispanics, so that is an issue right there of the kids not being able to learn. And then the food, which I'm sure is being catered in, just that, and having the kids be getting sick because the food is being left out. I mean, just the safety and the health of those children is, we definitely have to do something.
Absolutely. One other thing I wanted to mention just very quickly, when we inquired around special needs services, like are there special education services available or ELL, for English language learners, any of those occupational therapists, speech and language, you name it, the response we received was, well, there are consultants that do that. When we asked about a schedule, there was no apparent schedule. When we asked what day of the week they come, we were not able to get an answer to that question.
Thank you. Mrs. Patrica?
Is there any indication that the collegiate academic enterprises will object to this termination?
One of the things that, and I'll have Ms. Kennedy and also I'm sure Ms. Dupree-Bruno will want to weigh in on this, because what this does is triggers a next set of actions, which would include, I believe, a 90-day process of which there can be an appeal. So let's talk about what will happen next should the board recommend this action, and hopefully that will answer.
That was actually going to be my next question, but let me ask you one more question first, if I may. Have we had, their website indicates that there's another collegiate academy or collegiate school in Broward, but there's no website or anything.
So
when I out to them?
When I inquired about that, she said that that school wasn't open because on their application, when I went back to look on their application, they applied for 3 different districts, and she said that they did not open the other schools. But I will say we did attempt again today to contact Ms. Barnes, and there's no answer. I know the commander has also attempted to contact because we're trying to, get keys and those kinds of things. There's no answer. There's no follow-up. And today, so Ms. Schroll called the school, and a different person, Ms. Hayes, said, Ms. Sanchez says she's the acting principal now. So I don't know. I don't know if we're going to be able to, the place where we're planning to deliver the letter is, from what I understand, it may be a UPS place. So there's no way to indicate, but next steps. If the termination, if the school board action is to terminate, then the plan would be for me to go out to on-site to notify as well as the PO box, doing all of our notifications. And I know Ms. Jordan had offered to go if that was the action that was taken. And I arranged with we have migrant recruiters that are used to working with from on-site to calling student assignment. And so we've worked with the migrant recruiters are going to go with me, along with the Lieutenant Lowe, to notify, then start working with families to give them the information and to actually on-site be able to move them to one of our schools. So the plan is, I guess, for me to be there until we get the kids moved over. And Dr. Spiro did say that he would also, right now with the teachers, we don't know how they're going to react. If they have indeed moved over to this coast and are certified teachers, we would try to hire them as teachers. But they could just walk out, and Dr. Spiro is ready to provide a couple teachers until we get all the students placed.
Mrs. Patrica?
Okay, what are the feeder schools, and are they at capacity? What are the schools around there that would absorb these students, and are they at capacity? If you don't have that information, you can send it to me.
The closest school to the site is Edgewood, and I don't know the answer to that. I do know that Student Assignment has a list of the students and has already worked on where have they previously been and identified some of that information.
All right, good. And then from a district perspective, close to $141,000, are we going to audit the school and figure out where that money went? And I know that, it's going to be difficult for us to get it back, but.
So my understanding is, of course, we would take over any property, but there's very little property that they've purchased. And so I have talked to Dr. Desamore and Mr. Gatewood on those factors. But yes, I'm sure we will attempt to retrieve the funds.
I'd like to request that if, there's any showing of purposeful wrongdoing, that we pursue perhaps a forensic accounting and take the necessary steps from there with other agencies.
I know the discussion last week was, anticipating this, that we were looking for how can you maybe even close their or freeze their bank account. But we're limited in the actions we can take, and that's the unfortunate part.
But in any of these cases, it's actually included as part of this action agenda item. It says over $140,000 has been paid to the charter school at this point. The district will make every attempt to recover these funds, which is the normal part of our process.
Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Bruno?
From a legal standpoint, the next steps, we will take this notice that has been drafted if the board approves. It will be delivered statutorily. We're required to provide it to their governing board as well as to the principal. We've asked for an immediate termination of the charter, which means that we will take over the operations of the facility. We must take over the operations of the facility. Thereafter, nothing stops us from the statute. We can offer parents an option if they want to go into a district school. If parents do not want to change, we must continue to operate that school until the time has expired. So they have 10 days, the governing board will have 10 days to advise us if they want to have a hearing in front of an administrative law judge. If they do, it will go through an expedited process, and we're supposed to have an order from the administrative law judge within 60 days. Once that time has expired, at that point, we can officially close the school.
So,
Thank you for
so
that.
board members, just as she indicated, this is, in my estimation, the most aggressive action that we have ever taken against a charter school. But I do believe that, having heard the testimony of our administrators in terms of what they've seen, what I have heard, I certainly feel that this action is warranted.
Okay, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. First, I wanted to say that the grounds for termination report was very thorough and quite disturbing. Second of all, I noticed that they had applied for charters in early 2019 in Palm Beach, Pinellas, and Broward. Are we saying that they have never opened any of those schools and that no money was paid by those districts to this entity?
I don't know that
You don't know
for
that,
certain.
okay. And then have we been in contact with parents now, or we're waiting till after we make this decision today?
Correct. We have not contacted parents. I do have a letter ready that to give to parents this afternoon, and with the recruiters had planned on discussing with parents on site.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens, then Ms. Jordan.
In listening to all that's going on, and I'm inclined, of course, to follow at this point what the superintendent is recommending. It just strikes to me, though, of a larger issue in that how can a parent, choose to send their student to a school that is in this situation? I mean, school just started a few weeks ago. So somewhere along the line, parents made the decision to do that. And the question that comes to me on our responsibility is that when we have a student in Lee County School District that decides to go to a charter school, do we have any process in place where we do talk with, the counselors or the social workers, talk with the parents to help them understand this is not your only choice before they make that decision to move that child and to, possibly hurt their academic future? Sometimes in the charter school, for whatever reason, the parent feels this is my only choice. And I've seen a lot of situations where it's been, behavioral or something like that, and they decide to put them in. But what do we do? And do they have, is there a process that the parents can sit down with a counselor or the social worker to find out exactly why they're doing this and to let them know this is an option, however, here's what may happen, or this is what is going on? And that's really a concern of mine.
I can tell you that being on site, I had the same question as to why would a parent select this school? And the only thing I could come up with that, being on site is that they hadn't been in the building to see all, and didn't know all the things that are happening that we shared with you. They don't have that knowledge. On the outside, okay, it doesn't look good, so maybe they thought, and some of them live right next door. But I would tell you that 20 of the 40 are new to they've never been in one of our schools.
Well, and that's the thing. It's more so educating the parents than it is educating the children and letting them know. I mean, if you just moved into the area, you're monolingual, et cetera, it's right there, it's close. You think they're going to educate and feed and take care of my child. They don't know any better. So we have to be able to, in some way, educate parents through school choice or whatever it is we choose to do, but somehow give them some knowledge and understanding.
And I think almost every one of the kindergarten students are ones that are new to, obviously new to the district.
Ms. Gittens, Madam Chair. Ms. Gittens, the other thing that I would look at as well is the flyer that probably went out to the neighborhood. It's a very enticing flyer. They're supposed to get free iPads, foreign language, sports, performing arts. This is a collegiate preparatory school. So it was very deceiving to parents, I think, is part of what has happened in this situation, and deceiving to the district as well.
And I can understand with the pre-Ks and the kindergartners because they haven't been to school. But to make the decision to put an older child there, I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that it's our fault. I'm just saying what can we do to assist that something like this doesn't happen again? I mean, do we, if there's something in process where if a student is going to a charter school, they have to do thus and such. I don't even know if legally we could do that, but I'm just saying, I just don't feel like we just say, okay, you want your child to go there, and we say, fine, bye. There's just got to be some education of this demographic of parents.
Well, Ms. Gittens, I believe that, some of the things that you're trying to do with parent involvement and that we are trying to do as a school district with our pre-K initiative are probably the best things that we can do. I really think information is power. I think that our individual schools really try to do a good job with kind of marketing and getting the word out to their schools. But somebody new to the area, obviously, it has always been a challenge. I think we've gotten better. But making those connections in the community, which is what we're wanting to do, and then expanding our pre-K, because if we have students in this, and this is one of the areas that we're focused on starting, with the example would be the expansion of James Stevens, which is broken ground, trying to create those conduits from pre-K into our existing schools.
Can I
So,
just-
I hear you, but also, I think you understand the challenges here.
No, and I do, and let me just say this one part to what you just said about, getting into the community and trying to let them know about our schools and all that we have. So maybe that's where involving current community families that are already involved, instead of someone people get intimidated as someone from the district. It just does. They intimidate them. So if the program is to help the community find out what we have and how we can help your child, involve some of those parents that have done that program and have them be some of the spokespeople in these areas to work with the district to talk about. And, maybe they speak the language or maybe whatever, and maybe they're their new neighbor. And people would be more inclined to listen to them and say, well, here's my child did this, and we love this program because, and welcome to the neighborhood type thing. That's the kind of community things that we've got to find a way to do. Because people are intimidated, I know. They are intimidated by someone, coming from the district saying something. And they would not be as intimidated by someone in the neighborhood. That comes back to our SAC and DAC and all that, and how we get people in there. Because if those feeder schools have SAC members that are willing to help with a town hall or help with some presentation. And I'm not saying we're not doing something and we're not working on it. I'm saying that we need to possibly step it up in some areas.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Ms. Jordan?
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. It is good. If you have community, people are more apt to do that. That's true. Just like in a church. A church member is always going to get more than we would. But my question is, if we do not have a key, do we change the locks and then get a key and lock them out? What happens because we don't have keys to the building?
Attorney Bruno?
Should be able to contact the landlord with the notice and be able to get the keys from the landlord. They should have a spare key. And if worse comes to worse, if we need to change the locks.
Then we would do that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, and before I ask Ms. Dupree Bruno a couple legal questions, in response to what Ms. Gittens said, I'm not a fan of charter schools. That said, we do have some excellent charter schools in this district, and as a choice district, I think we would get ourselves in a bit of trouble if we try to talk parents out of going to this school or that school. This was a terribly unfortunate incident. Anyway, my legal questions, Ms. Dupree Bruno, are, number one, do we, as a district, with our charter schools, do we have liability in terms of if students, if something happens, like somebody comes in and maybe it's a divorce thing and a parent takes a child or somebody, and the free access to the school, if a child gets hurt, seriously injured, what would be our liability? And secondly, I know the FTE money, we give the checks, and that's the check we're talking about, just that. But the charter schools, don't they get PICO funds and some other funds directly from the state? And I know that reading prior incidents of charter schools closing, that usually this money is not recouped by the state. If they give money to a charter school and that charter school closes, it's like bye-bye taxpayer money. Is that true? Is it any different if the school, instead of on their own cognizance, close versus they're closed down? Does the state get any of the money back? I'm thinking it's a no, isn't it?
Well, there are some funds that the state will go back, but I'm going to defer to Dr. Desmore in terms of the specifics. The statute is very explicit that when a charter school is terminated, how the funds are dispersed and what the process is. So I'll defer to Dr. Desmore on that part. With regards to your first questions in terms of liability, the statute is also very clear that pretty much these day-to-day things that you're referring to, a parent takes a child and there's a custody issue, those kind of everyday things, they are responsible for that. We are not liable for those issues. Where our liability can come in is if we are not monitoring the charter as we are supposed to, and something happens because we did not do what we were supposed to, then we can be exposed. But there, a normal
Are we in
school-
that window of we could be or not?
I'm sorry?
Are we in, you said if we're not doing what we're supposed to. It sounds like we're doing what we're supposed to be
Yes.
doing.
Yes.
So we're still not
We've
liable
We've
in case
taken
a tragedy
action,
occurs.
and we're moving forward. So once the board votes, we'll be able to move forward.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Desamore.
Yes. So in answer to a couple of the questions that you asked about some monies that they may have received from the state. So the only things that we're aware of, sometimes a charter school will get like an opening school grant. In this particular case, this school did not apply for or receive that, but they did receive FTE funds and also some portion of CARES Act funds, as Dr. Atkins alluded to on the information that was put into the agenda item. So we'll take all actions that we can to recover funds. So we'll work through our attorneys to recover whatever cash that they may still have. We also go to the facility to recover any equipment or things that they may have purchased with that cash and recover that those things as well. And then we'll do other things such as, like I said, working through the attorneys. They also have insurance. So we have a couple of different options in which we could work to try to recoup any funds that we have given them. There is, of course, a chance that there are some funds that we gave that we will not be able to recoup because they are not there and no other means in order to recover them. But we'll take every legal action that we can to try to recover as much as we can, either through actual cash or through items, property that may have been purchased with that money.
Well, I'm glad for, but aren't there other state monies that come to them that will not be, the state won't be able to recoup?
That could very well be so, but as I said, the only things that we are familiar with that they received are monies that came directly from state, right, taxpayer money through the district, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're not aware of anything else that they may have received from any other agencies.
Okay, thank you.
So
Maybe some of our local delegation needs to take a tour and educate themselves about what can happen with the charter school. Sorry, had to say it.
So, Dr. Desamore, then when charter schools get their PICO funding, which we don't get any longer, that goes directly from the state to them, or does that come through us also?
That flows through us as well.
Okay. And then, I don't know if you have the answer to this, but, so as I was reading through the contract and everything, it was quite impressive, as was the brochure. So, typically, before signing the contract, because I know we approved this contract, is an inspection of the facility part of the process? And if not, maybe it should be in advance of completing the contract in the future. And I don't know if that's part of the legal process or not.
I do recall reading something that they are able to open and have their application approved without the facility being selected, and I think that's a statutory thing that I read.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gittens?
One kind of strange question is, they were made aware of this process and procedure today? Were they?
As far as the board meeting,
Yes.
I did not notify them of the board meeting.
Okay, but it is a public meeting. I guess I was just wondering why, even in public comment, that there was no one here to speak on their behalf or them to speak on their behalf. Is
I-
that,
And Attorney Bruno will respond to that.
Ms. Giddens, we can't move forward because the board is the sponsor, so we can't move forward with anything until we have board action. Once we have board action, then they will be notified with the notice, and they will have an opportunity to present their position and be provided due process if they so choose within 10 days to go in front of an ALJ, administrative law judge.
okay, so before we finally do the vote, if you could just say, just briefly, okay, this is one, in 10 days this, and 60 days this, and 90 days that, just so we have a clear layout of what we're talking.
Yes, ma'am. And they will also understand that because it's part of the notice, which is a legal document, and it provides them and tells them that they have 10 days to request a hearing, and then they also have 30 days to appeal once the report and recommendation. And if they choose to go through the ALJ will issue a recommendation. This will then come back to the board for the board to adopt or not adopt as it sees fit.
And that 60-day time that you said we could,
60 days is because of the fact that we're asking for an immediate termination of the charter. Things are expedited, because normally you'll have 90 days to go through the process, but the statute allows for some type of expedited process and will request that the ALJ issue their order within 60 days of the termination. So they're going to try to expedite it and move it forward as quickly as possible.
okay, so we are asking today for us to immediately terminate, for academic services to take over in whatever format that means by sending either the students that are enrolled back to our schools or providing academic teachers or whatever for those that remain, correct?
So we have to be very, very careful, because we are terminating not on a normal course. We're terminating immediately. Based on that termination, a lot of times when you terminate charters, the charter school is still operating the facility until you go through the process, they have the hearing and et cetera. That's the normal course, and usually it takes 90 days. That's what the statute requires. In this particular case, because we're terminating immediately, we're basically saying that we're going to step in and take over the operations of this school, and that's basically what we're doing.
Okay.
Just some information or just a question related to that in terms of if we're saying we're taking over the operation of the school, then some logistics, I believe, will have to work out, such as if we're in that facility, so who pays the bills of that facility, the rent, the additional teachers. So if we're not reassigning the students right away, then there is also some financial implication to that. And I just want to, I apologize, that was a nuance that until she said that I didn't quite understand that. So we just need to make sure that we are on the same page in terms of how we handle that, because then that potentially costs, us more financially rather than trying to reassign those students as quickly as possible.
Mrs. Giovanelli.
So actually, that was one of my questions. So we don't actually know what the cost to the district this will be, the impact, do we, as of the moment?
Well, that would be correct. Based on that piece of information, then we're talking about something different.
Thank you.
Attorney Bruno.
And I just wanted to go back to Ms. Vaughn's question with regards to liability. I did want to point out to the board that we have in the charter contract, there is indemnification clause, and they're supposed to have insurance to indemnify the district if something happens. So I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I did not understand.
Okay, any other comments, board members?
Still try to.
Dr. Atkins and staff, any further comments or discussion?
That's it, Madam Chair. I think, again, I think what you've seen here today is a lot of rationale that's been provided why we really need to immediately act to take over the school and terminate this contract. So
Thank
that's
you
the
very
action that I'm requesting.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, then, board members, please record your vote. Then the motion passes unanimously in support of the superintendent's recommendation. Okay. Thank you all. Moving on to other business, we have board members' comments.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Ms. Gittens had her hand up.
Pardon me?
Ms. Gittens had her hand up.
I can do
Oh, I'm
it during
sorry.
I can do it during my comment, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Giovanelli,
I have none.
Ms. Patrica?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Just to apologize again for being late. There was an accident outside my neighborhood, and there was an accident on Colonial, so my bad.
And
Sorry.
That's to them.
You don't need to apologize. We're just happy that you got here safely. Okay, Ms. Jordan?
I just, one thing real quick, I had sent out a email regarding legislative initiatives or issues, and thank you, Ms. Morgan and Ms. Fisher, because I know that you have sent those to Carol, so she already has those, so if we could get those in, because we will be scheduling a meeting to discuss that. I know that Carol and Ashley has already had a conversation with the superintendent's office and everything, so we just need to get our thoughts together so that we were prepared when we have our meeting.
I thought we were supposed to send them to you. I thought, for some reason,
To Latanya,
oh, okay, I sent them
Ms. Thomas,
to Kathy, so okay.
Yes.
so thank you.
Thank you. Anything else?
No, thanks.
Okay, Ms. Gittens?
Just for the record, Ms. Vaughn mentioned earlier about my comment about the community and notifying parents, and I do understand and I agree, there are some excellent charter schools and alternative schools, and there is a place for, students at each of these. However, my point was to explain to parents their options and not as much explaining to them or talking them out of going to a particular school, but just letting them know that there are options and explaining the big picture to them. And I think that's all I have to say. And thank you all for keeping your eyes and ears and hearts open.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
Only thing I want to add is kind of to reiterate something I said earlier. As we consider legislative priorities, I think some of these statutes that have been brought up as we discuss this seem to place a really heavy burden on the district to, in their monitoring of charter schools. And I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong that and granted, this is an extreme case, but when you look at the statutes that Ms. Dupree-Bruno cited, it does seem like we have the heavy lifting on this, and these are all the kids in our charter schools. They're our kids. They're our Lee County kids, and I would just like to see, I'm not sure, I'll have to talk with Ms. Dupree-Bruno, that we add something to our legislative priorities in dealing with something like this. And I would also love for, just case in point, for maybe a couple of our local delegation to take a look at the extreme, what could happen with the charter schools and how difficult it is to undo it. So, invitation, any of you out there that think that charter schools are always wonderful, there are wonderful charter schools, but at the extreme, this could happen, and I'm glad we have moved, that we have voted to act on it. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you. Ms. Morgan.
So I just want to say I'm appreciative that staff has taken, has acted on, within the legal authority provided by the statutes to do what they're doing. The statutes, the legislature does not really welcome board oversight of charter schools. So to the extent that, we have been able to step in, I think we've acted aggressively, and I'm appreciative of that. Off topic, this would be sort of a good of the order, but Cindy McClung spoke to me yesterday about working on a workshop for something that I recommended for a workshop, I'm going to say several months ago, which was stakeholder communications. And before she proceeds to commit her time and we commit workshop time to that topic, I believe that board members should agree that that's a topic they want to discuss, just not that one board member wants to discuss the topic, but that all board members want to discuss the topic. Anyway, since I put that recommendation in, Ms. Lancaster and Mr. Malloy have given us a briefing on communications. So I just want to know whether there's any real interest in dedicating a workshop to stakeholder communications in this group at this time with Ms. McClung, or if there were other things that have higher priority. So it's just...
Okay, board members, and we'll start with Ms. Giovanelli. Do you have an interest in stakeholder communications workshop?
I still think it's a great idea. Considering some of the surveys that went out and so forth, I had a lot of complaints about the surveys over the summer and so forth. So I think that communication is still an issue. So I would support having a workshop. I don't know how we want to prioritize it, because we do have a lot of priorities. So I would be open to that aspect. So that's it for me. Thank you.
What Ms. Giovanelli said.
Okay, thank you.
I'll
Ms.
stick
Jordan.
with you too.
Okay, Ms. Gittens.
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
think we have some issues
you'd
that we
say
need
yes.
to,
Yes.
that we
Ms.
need to
Vaughn.
cover, so.
Yeah, I feel that there are always the ongoing issues. I would put it off a little bit since we just had a briefing, but something that I might be interested in is, in this COVID world, how has, if we have any way to have statistics or reports on how have things changed, have they gotten better? And also, I know with EDAC, just had EDAC meeting, and one of the issues we were talking about was to meet face-to-face or to continue with the Zoom meetings. And we decided to go through December with Zoom, and it leads me to wonder if on our advisory, and that might be an area that we need to look into, our advisory groups, because it seems to me this year was a tough year in having volunteers that wanted to serve on the advisory committee. And a lot of the people that volunteered were people who had already served. And so it seems to me maybe that's an area that really affects us as board members, our board advisory committees. And whereas it's wonderful to be able to, as a member at EDAC said yesterday, she was new and she really wanted to meet the people in person, but I'm just wondering if perhaps we would get more participation if we just said we're going to have X number of in-person meetings, but the rest will be Zooms for those advisories, if that would make it more palatable to people with busy schedules who, so that might be something, it's a small part of the topic that you brought up, but that might be something on how we increase our participation. And is Zoom something that would possibly increase that participation? So those are my comments on what Ms. Morgan brought up.
Thank you for that. And then, did you have something else, Ms. Gittens?
Well, I just wanted to say, yes, I agree with what was just stated. I do believe as well we would have better participation with at least partial Zoom meetings part of the time. To me, though, it brings up the bigger question of the legislative mandate of sunshine. And I know that's, like trying to eat the whole elephant, but there are just, I don't know when, if not now when, do we talk about the restrictions and the downfalls of having to be that under thumb with sunshine law, that they're just things we can't, accomplish. So I don't know if that's a part of the communication, if that's a part of when we're talking about legislation, but it does create issues.
Thank you. So my comment is that, first of all, I support Mrs. Morgan's suggestion that we address in a workshop stakeholder communication, because I think that's a very important part of our position as the representatives of the community. And with the advisories, one comment that was made, that there was better attendance at many of the advisory meetings with the Zoom meetings, because it's a lot more convenient for people to be able to log on rather than to leave their work and drive over and et cetera. So that would be another good topic underneath the stakeholder communications, along with sunshine law and implications, because I think that those questions are going to come up with that. So I do support that. And yes, Ms. Morgan.
So I was just going to say, just listening to what some of the comments offered, I think it would be very, very helpful to Ms. McClung if some of the comments made here were forwarded to her so that she was able to structure the workshop in a way that really responded to some of the concerns of board members, rather than just, sitting down and doing a communications workshop.
Yeah,
So,
and I agree with that, and that was going to be my next suggestion too, so thank you. Okay, so, yes, Ms. Vaughn.
Could we have, among other points in that, a focus on a discussion on how we can get broader participation? Because I'm sure all of you were aware when we were asked to, who are we nominating, there weren't very many applicants. And again, a lot of them were members for years on some of these committees. And I don't want to make it sound like we don't welcome them for years on a committee, but it would be nice to get a broader base on those. So I see that as an issue. If we're really going to have vibrant, participating advisory groups, that we have a broader base and that we somehow find a way to get more people to participate in those committees.
I think that's worth
So
discussing
maybe
too.
part of the emphasis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ms.
I
Jordan?
just have a question. Who is, that's a great idea, the information to be given to Ms. McClung, but who is doing that?
Well, I mean, we could each send it directly to
Oh, for
her.
everyone to
Oh,
do that?
okay.
I just want to clarify that.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So then, my only comments are regarding legislative priorities. I think historically, with FSBA and the consortium, we've seen more local district control in regard to charter schools as a legislative priority, so I can't imagine that wouldn't be a good thing to discuss when we meet with Mrs. Green. And I want to thank staff for the swift action regarding this charter school situation, because it is very disturbing. And my final comment is that yesterday, on September 15th, Dr. Atkins celebrated his 5th anniversary as superintendent. So,
Thank you.
can you believe it? Okay, Ms. Bruno.
I have no comment, thank you.
Okay, and Dr. Atkins.
The only comment is we'll be also providing a little bit of staff input for you regarding the legislative agenda. There's some priorities that we feel are important. One is and I'll just be very brief, the whole issue of school grading and the impact in this current environment. That's one. Mr. Davis is bringing forward one regarding cybersecurity, which is very alarming. And I do think it should be something that we may need some legislative relief or help. And many of the other ones are related to, the other few are related to our Big Five and the strategic plan, pre-K and career and tech ed, those type of things. So we'll be providing that for you in addition, as additional backup. Thank you.
Great, and thank you. Okay. On Monday, September 21st, there'll be a board workshop at 1 p.m. On Tuesday, there'll be, September 22nd, there'll be a briefing at 1 p.m. as well as an action meeting at 6. At this point, having no further business to come before this body and seeing no objection, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.